Well, welcome back. If you have been paying attention on my channel, you know that what we've been doing on the Mustang is I cut out the old extremely rusted cowl section, getting ready to replace it. And of course, as is always the case on rusty vehicles, when you cut away rust, cut away panels, you find more rust. This is what I've got to contend with before I can put the actual cowl panel back in. On both sides underneath, I've got this rust right here to contend with. I've got this rust hole here to contend with, and this being the other side, this right here is rusted free as well. This right here, I can do some patching on that, that'll be fine. I've got some areas over here where, for the lack of a better term, I screwed up getting the actual spot welds drilled out and went all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some standard 18 gauge sheet metal, and I'm going to make patches for this. Not real sure what that noise was. I'm going to be making patches for this right here, and I'm going to make a patch to go behind these and weld those up. This right here is double, so I figure I can put a double panel here, and it's not going to hurt anything because that goes underneath, and I'll be able to get that done. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to attach a panel on the other side and weld that in. That way all those are filled and ready to go. Well, let's get started. First thing I need to do is take some measurements here to find out how much of this I actually need to replace. I believe this right here is thick enough I'll be able to just weld that in and fix that crack right there and get that done, because that's still thick. Right here is where it needs to be replaced. I think I might even go back as far as right here, which is going to be about, I think if I go back about 7 inches, that will work, which is about what I had to do. I've already measured the other side. That's about what I'm going to have to replace on the other side. Now here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply, since this is really good metal here, and this is not going to show, I think what I'm going to do is trim all this rust out, but I'm going to leave this here, make a panel that arcs over about an inch. This is an inch. But I'm going to spot weld it to the back of this area here, and then loop it over, cutting off this rusty area. So I think I need to go down and make this about 2 inches. And then 1 inch, so I need about 3 inches this way, and then measure an inch and hammer it to bend it over. Let me show you how we do that. Now again, we're going to go about 3 inches this way, about 7 inches this way. So, I measure 7 inches. I can straighten that up just a little bit. 7 inches is going to be right about here. 3 inches up is going to be right about there. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to straighten this up after I get this piece out of the way to actually be able to cut this a little bit better. I'm going to draw a straight line with some pliers. Hold on just a moment. Okay, we're going to bend this out of the way, that way I can get to this and measure a good measurement. And I'm going to measure that way. Using this as a right angle. And then of course, right here, just measure this as straight as possible. There we go. So, right there is what I got to cut out. Now, I'm not sure if you saw one of my earlier posts, but I had a little incident right there, as you can see, with the cutting disc. I had one of these cutting discs explode on me. I was wearing protective clothing, but it went through the clothing and ripped my shirt up and everything. So I remembered that I have something that's a little bit better for this kind of work than a cutting disc, because it's a lot safer. Thanks, Harbor Freight. These are metal snips. Let's go ahead and we're going to clean this off here and cut like so. That's a little bit nicer, don't you think? Now this right here, not that big of a deal. It's not exactly square, but I'm going to bend it down right here for the 1 inch, and this is going to go behind it. So what I need to do is I'm going to measure 1 inch from the top. I'm going to mark that right there, and 1 inch down here, right there. Draw a straight line across, and that'll be my bending point. Now I am not overwhelmed with body shop tools. I'm just going to do this the hard and fast way. Use a hammer and a vise. Let's get busy. Just basically I'm going to line up that point there on my line and do some hammering. Move this down a little bit. You're going to have a little bit of distortion, but don't worry about that. I can straighten that up. That's not a problem. This isn't ideal. The best way would be a metal brake, but the fact of the matter is I just don't have one. So you do with what you can. Again, move it down. Let this collapse the area that it actually distorted. And you see you've got the roughed in piece just like that. Let's see how it fits. Just a rough test fit. You see that's going to line up very nicely. And I think what I'm going to do, this will fit a lot better once I cut all this excess out here, because you can see it's got a lot of burrs and stuff that are getting in the way. In fact, let me bend that out of the way now. This out of the way. Again, do some test fitting here. And you can see that's going to fit in there very well, just like so. Then I can come in there and drill the holes and everything else. Now what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut this out right here, leave this back here, and plug weld this to the back, and then weld it, and then do a butt weld to weld this seam here. On the other side, I've got that piece done. You see here the same amount of rust. I made this piece a little bit differently because it's a little bit of a different shape, but you can see that's going to fit in there nicely also. Butt weld that in. I'm going to spot weld that in the back, and that should be good to go once I get that done. Now on this piece here, I'm also going to trim out some of this excess, square that off a little bit so I can make my patch panel a little bit better, and then weld that in from behind, and that should be just good too. Check this out.
Do you have a trash can?
Huh?
Trash can?
Right over there in front of the Cobra. Check this out, honey. What you're seeing here, these are the areas that I patched. I can go in and trim this out now to make it all flush, nice and flush. But as you can see, I've got a nice solid basis to mount that to. Same goes with over here. See here? This is nice and solid now as well. No more rust. I've got some rust holes to repair over here. Excuse me. Rust holes to repair over here. And then I've got to come in here and seam seal this, attach these two panels, drill the holes for the plug welds, and then I can set it down inside. I've got this hole here I've got to fix, and I'm going to take this scrap piece that I've got right here. I'm going to cut that out to fit, weld that in so it's nice and neat as well. That way that's all nice and in dry as well. This is my first welding with my Arccaptian MIG200, and I have to say it welds better than my really cheap Lincoln welder that I've had for many years. It's a lot easier to use. I'm impressed with it. I gotta say I'm glad I bought it. It welds very nicely. Just make sure all of your surfaces are clean. Follow the instructions. A couple of times you saw there me learning how to use this, I had to reduce the wire speed just a little bit. I also had to reduce the voltage when I got to some of the thin metal because I was blowing holes in it. That fixed the problem. I layered up and filled the holes, grind off the excess because yes, I do grind because I am not an expert. And overall looks good. So next we're going to fill this hole, and then after that it's simply a matter of cleaning up the edges on this, welding this to the top cowl, and then fixing the holes that are under here that you saw earlier. Once that's done, weld the cowl in place and that portion will be done. couple of things. Number one, I am nowhere even close to even being a novice welder. Number two, I'm learning a new machine. Number three, I don't want to hear any wry comments from the welding crew out there. I have learned long enough on social media that one of the most toxic groups in the world is welders when you try to get them to critique your work. I'm not asking for a critique of my work. It doesn't have to look good because it's underneath, it's sandwiched between panels. All it has to be is strong. So what I've done is this. I've cut out rusty areas. I've got a hole to patch here. Got a couple of holes to patch here, but those aren't going to be a big deal. Plus, the cool thing is with the export brace I'm using, there's a metal angle liner piece that goes under here to brace it underneath, and I'm going to seam seal all of my seams anyway. That way we don't have any weather coming in. This right here, I grafted this in. Again, this is very rough, but this right here replaces that. And of course, you saw earlier those pieces there on the corner. This is what it looks like when the cowl section is in place and everything's pulled up snug. Cowl panel is in place. You can see here, these are going to pull up nicely because I'll go around all of my plug welds when I'm welding this in, pulling those up tight. Of course, this being an aftermarket panel, it doesn't fit the holes properly, but it will work. I've got nice bracing. It's solid all the way around. Once I get it seam sealed, I dress all of the welds that I have done and patch the holes. It should be good to go. And then the cowl, of course, goes on top of this. But that at least gives me something solid to mount to as opposed to the rotted out piece that I had there originally. This should work just fine. Again, this is a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. I'm not anywhere close to even being a novice welder, learning as we go, but this is something I want to teach myself how to do. I'm going to make plenty of mistakes, but at the end result, I'm not going to give up. At the end of the day, it's just metal. Keep cutting, keep making it fit. This looks good now. At least I've got a good foundation to mount everything on. Once I patch the holes, add the reinforcement and all of that, get the plug welds welded in. Plug welds I'm actually very comfortable with, so that's not really going to be an issue, I don't think. Once all that's done, grind back the plug welds, make it look good, cowls in, we're good to go. I'm going to end this video here. We will be back with a continuation of this and also, of course, trying to get this thing started as well. And yeah, the Cobra bodywork, I get it. I understand, I hear you. I'm getting to it, and I will indeed. Thank you for joining me. Please hit like and subscribe if you want to join me on my journey of incompetence. We'll see you next time.